Loud and clear.
Loud and clear. Loud and clear. That's what we say as we are all here. I'm a poet. And
I can't hear you at all now.
You can't hear me. You can't hear me.
I can hear you.
I can hear you. You can hear me. Maybe together we can hear.
These are post-summer holiday gremlins that we're experiencing at the moment.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Wow Ergonomics on a wonderful Friday. If you're wondering what the slightly bizarre beginning of this show is, Mark struggling to get the old audio working. Can you hear us, Mark? Can you hear us? He'll get there. He'll get there. Stephen, how have you been?
I've been very well. Very well, thank you. We're back after the summer break. Kids are back to school, so it's full speed ahead. So yeah, all pretty good. How about you? You're back refreshed from your 2 holidays?
Can you hear me now, guys?
Yes.
Yeah, we could hear you all the time. We could hear you all the time.
Can you hear us though, Mark?
Yes.
Right, but we can't now hear you because now you've got rid of your speaker, which is the speaker on your headset. This is
that better?
That's
yes,
the one.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
Okay.
There we go. We got there in the end.
Okay. Folks, we've got Dalmatian joining us today. Probably one of the first times you're ever going to hear a Dalmatian talk about ergonomics anywhere in the world. But you know, it's the novelty of Wow Ergonomics. So Mark Rigby is joining us all the way from
Wigan,
which is apparently a place in the UK with a rugby team. Apparently,
it is.
Yeah, you see, he's immediately going to get quite defensive when I say that. Of course, other places in the UK's with rugby teams do exist as well. I mean,
you may be familiar with either the rugby or the pies, or the more cultured amongst us would refer to George Orwell.
Oh yes, there you go.
And the baked bean factory.
It is as well. Yes. Well, it's the Heinz factory. Could be beans, yes. Could be ketchup.
Yes.
There we go.
I was brought up in Bedford, which obviously was a rugby place as well. Some places are really football places. Some places are quite rugby places, don't you think? Other places try to be both, and some succeed at that, and other places completely fail at that. Where were you brought up, Stephen? And was that a rugby place or was it a football place?
I was born in the northeast, I was born in Sunderland, which is where you went to university. But I live in the Midlands. I live in Sutton Coldfield. So
I didn't know that about you, by the way. I didn't know that.
Didn't
about
you?
No.
Born in the northeast. Yeah. Well, hence why I've carried the curse for 40 odd years, is supporting those fine chaps in red and white stripes. But the northeast is very much a football area, and the Midlands has little pockets of rugby. We are very much Villa, Blues, Wolves, West Brom country around here. It's very much, there's a lot of rugby participation in Sutton Coldfield and the West Midlands, but we're not really renowned for professional teams like your Wigans or your other areas.
I think at this point, I think we need to clarify the 2 different kinds of rugby. Obviously, I'm talking about rugby league, the professional game, which technically is only played in 2 counties. The other game, the kind of public schoolboy masons and policemen, the happy clappers, that's rugby union, that's nationwide. But mine's the professional game. Mine's the hard one, the serious game.
Yeah,
the one where we get paid.
Yeah,
right.
You started talking about sport.
Well, yeah, I was going to say
yourself. You led us down this path.
You do realise you're going to get an awful lot of stick from an awful lot of people for saying that. You do, right?
He's got broad shoulders. He's used to getting grief off people.
Well, you need broad shoulders if you're going to play rugby. That's for certain.
Well, far be it from me to mention this. There was actually a battle of the codes. There was Wigan, and I think it was Bath, or something like that, or Leicester, or someone and they played one game at rugby league rules and then one game at rugby union rules, and Wigan won them both. So, but you won't hear me saying that.
No.
There you go.
No. Well, yeah. But what you've got to think about as well with that is that, you know, the one game is probably more athletic than the other.
It is.
Yeah. And you can see that by the shape of the players.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, you're better to answer that, Steve, because you've got a foot in both camps. I think, as in, you appreciate both games. I assume.
I do
I know
appreciate
you
both
follow
games. I do appreciate both games, but I very much do like rugby league. I think it's a little bit more physical, a little bit more, and there's a bit more skill set required in it as well, to be honest. So I think I would certainly come down on the side of rugby league, the 13-man game to which Mark is alluding, than the 15-man game if I had to make a choice between the two.
But let's face it, we're not going to argue with anybody that plays rugby.
No.
Simple as that. Simple as that. There we go.
No.
They're all big chaps. They're all sportsmen. It's all good. Why the? Thank you.
I also have to point out at this point the reason for the Dalmatian. It's actually a Frisian cow, by the way.
Oh, a Frisian cow, right?
It's one of my sponsors, which is Oddballs, and they sponsor the Wigan Stormtrooper. But again, I don't really want to talk about that. But I thought it would be applicable to wear one of their shirts today.
Okay, so Mark is. You say you don't want to talk about it, but I've got to tell people for context reasons very quickly. So Mark,
it's not.
Mark dresses up as a stormtrooper and goes to Wigan matches and waves his hands a bit. All right, and that's it. Right, we're not saying anything
That's
more.
All we need to talk about. So I've got contractual obligations, things I can't say. A lot of people don't realise it's me.
No.
Yeah,
and we don't want to shatter that illusion.
No,
and maybe it still isn't. You know, it could be Mark. It might not. It might be. It might not be.
It could be. Yeah.
It could be you.
Yeah.
So, Mark, tell everybody that's listening, apart from being a Dalmatian, having oddballs, and and being possibly a stormtrooper at Wigan, what is it you do?
That is the question, and a lot of people would, well, I'm sure, are phoning in automatically now with various suggestions. Majority being saying sod all, but I, as you guys know, work with online ergonomics and have been for about 15 years now. I'm now the sales director, so yeah, it's all good at that side. I've been in the ergonomics industry now for good, how old am I? 30 years. I started back in the day. I say my mother-in-law started all this nonsense off. And when I say nonsense, she started the whole ergonomics business by opening the back shop in New Cavendish Street back in the day, and that was 1984. So if you want to put that into perspective, in those days, Jürgen, as we know him, was the delivery boy for RH, and it was Ulf and Rolf who used to come round. Ian Fletcher Price used to come round to the back shop when he had manufactured his samples of his writing slope and try them in the shop. It was literally, dare I say, pioneering and one of the first. Well, the back store, which was Lisa Quine, later her son, whose name escapes me, and then Dave Blood worked for Lisa, and that's how Dave Blood started in the business. And Barry Bennett, they bought the. So it's all, as you know, our industry is very incestuous. But the back store and the back shop opened within 2 weeks of each other in 1984, and they were the first RH retailers in store, for want of a better word.
And for anyone outside of the sector, we just need to point out that neither of those shops, stores, outlets sold backs.
No, not at all. They were terrible.
So would you say, Mark, is that almost, you mentioned 1984 there, is that the point in which it all
Another
began
George
in the
Orwell
UK?
reference for those cultured members.
Yeah. Is that where it all began, though, in ergonomics? Is that almost is everything we've done in the UK starts off that's almost our day zero when we're up to 40 years now? Is that the point you trace it back to?
Well, from my recall, if I remember rightly, and this is what I hear from my mother-in-law, that's when Posturite were invented as a manufacturer, and Ian had just left the army. RH, basically, my mother-in-law and Lisa Quine went over to Orgatech and found RH as a supplier and brought them into the UK. I think Guy was floating around. Guy might have a different story, but this is the story I've always been told. And people like James Putnam, who created some of the cushions, all from necessity. My mother-in-law had a bad back, realized there was none of these products. This is also way before the internet. Went to Sweden and sourced them, and this is where Stocker or Varia, the kneeler chairs, this whole thing kind of kicked off. So I do believe put it this way, it's one of the starting points in especially my journey, but I think of the journey, and the only person I think would have a different opinion or recollection would be Guy. I think is the only, or Ian Fletcher Price. They're the only two players left in the industry, as they say. Old fellas, as you know, a lot of the young fellas have retired, i.e., my boss Matthew Oliver, but there's still a few of the older guys hanging around, and Guy. Again, I'm not sure where Guy's timeline steps in, but it was basically the UK ergonomics market started in the early 80s.
Yeah,
according to
that seems about right for me. It's around about 40 years ago that it all kicked off here. What were people doing before that, I wonder? What do you know what people were doing before that?
Very little, because we always say, as a bit of a cliche, we're very much in the Stone Age when it comes to Scandinavia, because traditionally a lot of our products were Scandinavian. Namely, I've mentioned a few: Flock, RH, Haag. All these were not in the UK. There was no need to. There was no retailers. There was none of the smaller individual shops. There was no Posturites. There was none of the Barry Bennett's, or there was obviously no online companies, and there was no need for them. As you said, what they did, I don't know. And very little.
It's amazing.
I mean, the whole industry has started from that and grown. You'd have to ask someone a lot older than me, dare I say, and maybe from a facilities management, as in what did they used to do? Because I'm not sure when the DSE regulations came into play, what corporates used to do with people with back problems or musculoskeletal issues. I mean, when was Backer invented?
Well, Backer's 30 years old, so 1994. Yeah. So again, that was sort of 10 years after the date that you were referencing. So it all goes back a long way, really. And I wonder, though, prior to that, though, and I'm trying to tie it in with when did people start using computers at work, which I guess would have been mid to late 80s. Would that be right? I guess it would have, is that almost where the need and the necessity for products came from? Computers becoming a big part of people's daily lives, and therefore that overexposure to sitting at desks in those positions probably then exploded, I guess.
Well, I was gonna say, I mean, one thing that I do know is that because my mum worked as a secretary within a company, and I know that she worked in at one stage she worked in a typing pool as well, and she was taught to type, etc. And I know that as part of that, she would have used back in the day an old Imperial typewriter, etc. And as part of that, when they got taught how to type and do Pitman shorthand and everything else as well, they did get taught about posture. So there was a whole thing around, you sit actually on the edge of your chair and you sit upright, and you were told you used to have to sit upright and make sure your arms are at this angle, and so there was kind of posture advice given to typists, and very tight girdles.
Yeah,
as well. Very tight girdles.
I'm still like the flares. I'm still wearing those today.
Yeah.
So I suppose going back sort of like 60 years or so, there was kind of this sort of advice around maybe how you should approach the job and how you should sit or whatever, but probably
the whole essence, the whole kind of biomechanics of inputting information has gone from a typing position where you were coming at the keys from the top to now where we're typing where we're coming at it from the side to a flat low level input device, i.e. the keyboard. That did affect, that was when you had a typist chair, which didn't have arms on it because you were literally doing this. There was no, and that's traditionally it was called a typist chair.
Yeah.
And you can always tell people who have no idea about ergonomics when they reference, I need to get a typist chair. It's like they don't exist anymore. And even dare I say if you go back to the RH, if we use them as a benchmark, the RH1 and 1.5, a lot of people won't remember these. These were literally typist chairs with a back and a seat, no arms. And
I remember,
as you mentioned,
a very old Dofan one. Yeah, remember a very old Dofan one that was, and here we go. This is turning into a great history lesson of ergonomics.
Here we go.
But do you remember as well? Like a lot of those chairs had just 4 prongs on the base as well.
Yes.
Yeah, quite dangerous.
Yeah,
they did tip over very easily, which is why for anyone that's ever wondered why there are 5 prongs on the base of your chair, that's why there are now 5 prongs on the base of your chair, because it's incredibly hard with that star shape to actually tip it over. Whereas back in the day, if you managed to get it at the right angle and tip, you went with it.
Yeah.
So there you go. Amazing, isn't it? It's amazing. It is amazing that in just about 40 years, we've gone from literally throw people into an office, just let them work, however, and if they get a bit of backache, give them a pill or whatever, and to all of this stuff about well-being, and think about it now, like mental health considerations, neurodiversity considerations. It just unbelievable amount of difference in 40 years. Where are we going to be in? Here's a good question for both of you. Where are we going to be in 40 years' time?
Probably back to it'll go full circle. I mean, you mentioned that the historic elements. At the time of those typist chairs, you've got arguably architects and draftsmen and planners working at standing desks and accountants at ledgers. These are somewhat Dickensians, these kind of angled standing desks. And that was their desk. It wasn't an option. I mean, you'd like to think we've come along a little bit whereby we've now got the option, but it's coming full circle a little bit. But
or will we?
What goes around comes around.
Or will we all be watching Wigan play rugby whilst AI is doing it all for us?
Well, that's where I'll be tonight.
Okay.
There you go.
See, that could be the future,
8 o'clock. Wigan versus Hull KR. It's on Sky Sports.
Yeah, are you on sort of commission or something from Sky to plug in it? Or,
I've got to mention that. There's 7 things I've got to mention. Oddballs, which I've already mentioned. Yeah, which is a testicular cancer charity, guys. Before we start taking the piss, rather than the fun.
Yeah. Well, hang on. Are they? They're associated with the underwear brand, etc. Yes,
they are
as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't want to come on here and start showing you my underwear. That's the next week. I thought I'd wear one of their training tops.
No, that makes sense. Training to be in underwear. That is.
Yeah.
Very essential. Very essential. What do you think?
was going to say, just bringing it back to ergonomics, I'm really interested, Mark. You know, there'll be a lot of things that we've got to do a little bit. We'll get back onto rugby and stuff like that. But obviously there'll be a huge amount of changes in your time in the industry. But I've always asked Graham this in the past, and he's come up with a couple of great stories. But when you were at the coalface, as it were, getting involved in a lot of assessing, what are a couple or the three, you know, stories that sort of stand out for you, situations you've seen and you've scratched your head, and you know what's really sort of stuck in your mind as to why doing that?
I think at this point, it will be interesting for my fans to know about the famous people. But that's probably the question you're dying to ask.
Okay.
What famous people have I assessed? Who have I assessed?
Yeah. Which famous people, Mark, have you assessed?
Oh, now then, don't get me started. Let me think. Mick Fleetwood, Jonathan Ross,
wow,
Angelina Jolie, Kylie Minogue, Emma Thompson.
Really?
Ooh, yes. What's it? Ned Sheeran, as I called him. Ed Sheeran.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
And what were you assessing these people for?
Chairs, hopefully.
Chairs,
I've delivered chairs to these people.
So I just want to know. So clearly now this brings up a really interesting point, because you mentioned two names there that immediately sort of stood out, which was Mick Fleetwood and Kylie Minogue, because that's on both ends of the scale, isn't it, in terms of seating?
It is.
Yeah.
You'd be amazed how small. Cher was another one, sorry. And her credit card even said Cher, because I thought, is this a look-alike, or is it actually Cher? And it was Cher. But yeah, Mick Fleetwood, and actually, as is Jonathan Ross. Jonathan Ross has got a bed that we had to have specially made, which is 2.5 meters long and 2.5 meters wide. It was a bespoke.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is that just to get his ego in there?
Yeah. God knows. But the process behind or the reasoning behind this. This was all during the backshop days, by the way, and the backshop was literally on New Cavendish Street, just around the corner from Harley Street. So they go to the Harley Street specialists and come round and buy all the bits and bats from an ergonomic perspective.
Wow, there you go.
Yep. And I'm trying. There's a few others. I'll think of them. John le Carré. We had lots of authors, as you can imagine. The guy who wrote Boys from the Black Stuff, whose name escapes me.
Wow.
There you go. You've got Alison Thompson. That's a celebrity client. Listen, it is a celebrity client.
It is.
Isn't it? So,
yeah.
There you go. Who wrote the Boys from the Black Stuff, guys? What's his name? Is it the Liverpudlian guy?
Oh.
Ooh.
Why am I doing this when I've got the internet?
I don't know, but I'm going to say Google will know.
Yeah.
You know, because it's
Elizabeth Taylor. Sorry, that's the most famous. Elizabeth Taylor, I think.
Really?
Eclipses them all. Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
She, just so you know, she came into the shop and she bought 2 lumber rolls.
Yeah.
And then, which were the cheapest things in the shop, and like
she named one Richard and one Burton.
Yeah. And then had the Emmanuels to recover them and spent like £10,000. The Emmanuel, it was at the time of Princess Diana's, which was 82. Princess Diana's, that's when Emmanuels were obviously the big designers. She then asked us to send them to the Emmanuels for them to be recovered. And that cost, I don't know how much, but just goes to show.
Alan Bleasdale, there's your answer.
Alan Bleasdale, that's Alan. Ooh, the stories, me and Alan like that. No wonder I couldn't remember his name. But lots of our authors.
But I'm wondering though, these people that were being seen back then. I know we're talking pre-computer time here. A lot of these people, they weren't getting it from sort of computer work, but authors, you automatically think of naturally sitting at a desk or a table, hunched in an unnatural position for a long period of time. So we now talk about ergonomics is all around computer work and computer inputting, whatever it would be. But actually, you've just rolled off a number of people there from the sort of the showbiz arena, authors, etc.
My friends, as I call them.
Your personal friends, who again, it's the same thing. The actual physical hard writing was causing issues. All it's done is move the inputting device that was the pen. Has shifted to the keyboard and the mouse, but it's still the same type of principle of periods of working and types of activity that have caused or cause issues.
Yeah, it is. But that's why I say, where are we going to be in 40 years' time? Because surely at some point we're going to evolve our brains enough to go, actually, why are we doing this? Right? Why are we doing that? Right.
Well, I think with the inclusion of AI as well, I think the vast majority of the work is going to be kind of voice activated. I mean, we're now here having a conversation, literally, whereby before we might have been texting each other, or this would be on an email thread or something, or a text thread. I'm pretty sure authors are now, I don't know.
Although this is more akin to radio, which has been around for donkeys of years. Really, this is basically radio over the internet, which just means that it's more entertainment than anything else. But you're right. It's what you can then do with that, because I can take, Stephen knows, I can take this show, which is might be an hour's worth of useful information, and I couldn't then get AI to look at it, and I could get it to break it down into all sorts of things, and I could say, oh right, so now produce me posts out of this, or I can get it to take the transcript of this, and I could then get it to write a blog on this, and I can put it back up. So there's lots of ways in which we can use AI to do a lot of stuff that we may have been sat there trying to rack our brains into how to do before. But ultimately, it's a bit like, and I always bring it back to this, it's a bit like the men and women who dig holes in the road and then fill them in again. We need, as a species, to start looking at what work is actually essential. And why are we actually doing that? And I think one of the things that it really interests me in terms of AI is where AI is being used not to find a different way of doing the work, but where AI is looking at processes to go, well, actually, that's not. There's no benefit in that being done. You're not actually achieving anything, and that's where it's starting to become. Or it's starting to be used in some bigger organizations now. So actually look at the granulated effort and go, why is Terry spending half a day doing that? What do we, what's the benefit of that? Can't we get Terry, who went to university and got a degree in this, and is now sat there doing, a stupid job for us on a spreadsheet? Can't we get him to actually use his degree, So I think that we may see massive changes, I think, in terms of what people do.
I mean, it struck me the other day. We were doing, or a colleague of mine was tasked to go and do some research on a product that was very similar to ours. So we were quite interested, the old school, go and checking the websites and all that. And of course, what we did for the first, which I'd not been involved with before, was to use Copilot. So we gave Microsoft, it's Microsoft application Copilot, Graham, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
We gave that the job and said, can you compare what products are similar to and within 15 seconds it had done the work. And it's like we just spent hours trawling the internet, trawling websites, and it's now done it in a lovely, succinct, tidy way. It's presented it. It's like that's done in 15 seconds what we would have spent a day on.
Yeah.
It was staggering. As I say, that was my first sort of real interaction with it. And as you say, it then starts to think and go, how many other things am I doing as an individual? And other people in businesses will be asking themselves the same question. How many things am I doing that I actually just need to change it and go, go and ask Copilot or go and do this. And actually, it gives me more time to do other things, doesn't it? Rather than get, we've used the term grunt work in the past, Graham, haven't we? As a bit of a, some of those things that AI could address. But it makes you think, how much of that could we get rid of and free up people as time and resource to really add value and not just doing the mundane stuff?
Well, yeah, I think, and it'd be interesting to get Mark's view on this. I think, though, what we need to do is we need people to stop looking at filling the time that we create by using these clever tools and this special stuff with more rubbish that we shouldn't be doing, and just get back to real basics. I was saying on a podcast that I did this morning, for a start, Stephen's going to love this. Mark, you're going to love this. I was saying, for a start, I think all organisations ought to sack off all of their salespeople, because I don't think salespeople are relevant in the modern day and age for most businesses. Because
it's two of us out of a job, arguably.
Well, no.
And himself, because we don't need this show then, do we?
No, hang on a minute. Let me finish. Go on then. Because it depends where I'm going with this. Because ultimately, what we need to do is we need to replace salespeople with educators, right? We need to replace salespeople with people that actually work alongside the customer, right? And the bit that we need to get rid of is the merry dance. We need to get rid of this merry dance of like, I'm going to come and see you. We're going to have a cup of tea. I'm going to bring you a box of chocolates. You're going to go, well, I'm not sure whether we need it or not or whatever. Actually, we need to start getting a bit more professional right from the outset on all of that. So a company shouldn't really be looking at something unless they've actually bothered to design the brief. So we should be spending more time internally as a company before we even engage with people on the outside, going, this is what we need, so we actually understand our problem, and then we need to be bringing in experts that we work alongside. And actually, we should stop seeing this kind of merry dance about sales. It shouldn't really be about sales. It should be about relationships and collaboration and working together.
Well, I think personally, our whole industry, the whole ergonomics industry, none of us are salespeople at all.
There you go.
I'll use this as in, I don't, for us to sell a very expensive and high-end keyboard like yours, Steve, I can't go out. We're not Argos. I can't go out into the street and say, "Oh, come and buy this keyboard. It's brilliant. By the way, it's the best part of £100." People come to us saying, "Listen, I have an issue, and I need a quality keyboard or a mouse or a desk or a chair." I mean, I found this out in a hard way. I thought I was a really good salesman. When we had the back shop, but basically everyone who walked into that shop or comes up with online ergonomics comes onto our website or rings the office, and that goes to anyone in the office. No one ever rings up saying, "Can I have one of those really expensive keyboards I haven't been hearing about?" Basically, they come on and say, "I've got an issue and I need to get a new keyboard." That's not a sale. That's, can you demonstrate the 12 keyboards that are available, ranging from £12 to £100, and advise me as an expert? I mean, to give you an example, and I learned this the hard way, why doesn't Backer, for the next venture, take a stand at the Ideal Home Show? You know as well as I do, it's packed with people, but no bugger wants to spend £50 on a keyboard. That's a salesman. If you can have one of those little booths, because they're always there, because people going to that kind of show want to spend £10 on the latest vegetable slicer or mop. No one's expecting to spend £50 on a keyboard. That's a salesman. And that's why, dare I say, I don't consider myself a salesman. We tried it. It was an absolute disaster.
There you go.
We had a massive stand there, and we're dealing. You are dealing with the general public. These are kids with ice creams climbing on furniture. I'm used to people coming to me, in agony or with a severe issue, saying, "I've got this problem. Can you solve it?" That's not a salesman. That is a demonstrator who literally has got immense product knowledge and a basic understanding of of a medical condition. Obviously, we're not doctors; we can't cure them. But when someone says, "Listen, I've got fibromyalgia, my hands and wrists," it's like, great. I can't help you with that, but I can help you get a bit more comfortable with all of these keyboards and all of these mice or all these options. That's not a salesman. I don't consider myself a salesman at all. And I thought I was actually chatting to someone about that this morning. So yes, I agree with you. Get rid of all salesmen, because that's not us.
There you go. My partner in crime that was on the same podcast this morning says, there you go. Yes. If I'm going to buy off anyone, I need to know that my needs have been met. If nobody has taken the time to find that out, how will they know they have met my needs? And actually, I may think I want something that I don't. See, that's the problem. It was actually my post on LinkedIn this morning as well, was similar kind of vein. I was saying that actually, how many business owners get advice from other business owners, which is advice they don't actually need. Right? It's a similar thing out there, right? You don't, when you spent ages doing something or whatever, you don't need someone else coming alongside you and going like, well, do you know what you need to do in terms of marketing that? No, hang on, I've got a marketing strategy. I understand how I'm doing. Yeah, it's like, what I would need from you would be this, right? But too many people start from the wrong point. What we need to start with is by saying, what is it you need? No, not what can I give you, but what is it you need? Right? It's a completely different starting point. Because if you ask someone what they need and then they tell you, then you can probably give them what they need. But if you assume what they need is something that you've got, it's very arrogant for a start. And there was a lot of
but it cuts to the chase, and at the end of the day, as I mentioned, we're there to solve. I like to think we're here. Our job is to solve a problem. The whole business of ergonomics, unfortunately, is still very retrospective. We're there to solve the problem. No one's ever going to buy. I'll keep using you, Steve, because you're on the call, as they say.
That's fine.
No one's ever going to buy a million of anyone's keyboards as a proactive position. We talked about Scandinavia earlier, possibly there. I know this is where manufacturers have to manage their expectations between the Nordic market and the UK market. We are so far behind. Every product we sell, whether it's a backer product or anyone's product, whether it's an RH chair, invariably will be a reactive purchase for something that somebody needs. Nobody wanted it, because if they wanted it, they would have bought it before the person started or before they created this issue. And it's unfortunate, it's down to money.
But I think as manufacturers, one of our challenges to make sure that does flip on its head slightly. And actually, can we get people investing in good quality kit at the start? So it's more of a proactive. This is what you're touching on, Mark. Can we get organizations to be proactive instead of reactive? Because you've got that huge gap of pain that sits in between the two. And that's what we're looking to achieve as an organization. We know, working with the likes of yourself and lots of other organizations, we can reactively address those issues, but the real desire is, can we proactively address them before they've even happened? That's the real key to a lot of this is, and as you say, it does come down to money, and it does come down to investing in good quality product. If you're going to go and buy cheap and cheerful, there will be somewhere along the line a repercussion for that, whether it's the fact the product won't last as long, whether it causes pain. I'm just talking ergonomics here, but if something's cheap, there's a reason why it's cheap. Whether it's a car, whether it's a bit of ergonomic equipment, whether it's something used in the garden, there's a reason why it's at that point, because there's probably something it can't do, or actually there's something it will do that you don't want it to do.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing though. Going back to Mark and his friends, okay, is the kind of twist in all of this is what we do know though from society these days is that if you can get a friend to use it, then suddenly everybody wants to use it, right? So that's the other thing that's always been there to some extent, but is there more than anything else, or any other time in history, which is that there are influencers now. So, if Ed Sheeran one of Mark's friends, if Ed Sheeran
Ned,
suddenly
but go on.
decided to Ned Sheeran started to use a Stephen keyboard, right? And
Which he's got, by the way.
Which he has got. There you go, by the way. But for some particular reason,
you won't hear me saying that because I signed an NDA, I might add. I shouldn't really have said anything. Right. I know this is just a rehearsal, but when this thing goes live, can we cut that bit out?
Well, it's live. Yeah,
oh, right. So, okay. All right. Sorry.
Yeah. Right. Just, folks, if you were listening to that at home, just cover your ears. Right. Yeah. So the point is, if he had one of those things and whatever, and then when he, decided to, on stage, at Atlanta or whatever, pull out said item and go, yay! And then suddenly everybody would be going like, I want one of those. And that's it, you see. And then your job's done. You can go home, you can have tea, and you can, go and watch Wigan play rugby.
I'll have a word with him when I see him next to see, because he does use that foot pedal thing, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah.
That's
where you're going wrong, Stephen. You want to get a backer foot pedal.
Okay. I'll get onto the powers that be.
Yeah. I think
hang on a minute, though, Mark. Just very, very quickly, how do you know that the thing that's being advertised by Backer at the moment, which is that something new is coming,
is a surprise? Far be it for me to say anything, but you're getting close. You're getting close. But that goes back to, and maybe I would retract that. It's all down to money. It's not, because as you mentioned there, if Ned Sheeran all of a sudden did that, everyone will get one, and no one will complain about the price. And I think it's people's perception that's wrong, or dare I say priorities. I mean, if you think about it, we're all walking around with the best part of £1,000 or hundreds of pounds worth of kit in our pockets. We never did that. You never, you would, think that the world has changed. The world has changed. So believe it or not, a £40 keyboard, which sounds ridiculous, it's not. Where I'm going with this is it's the prioritizing of things. We'll spend £800 or however. I don't know how much the latest iPhone is.
Probably about that.
Yeah.
No. It's
more, isn't it?
It's more like £1,500, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, can you imagine that? You'll spend that on the thing that you speak on, but the other thing that, arguably,
because youngsters don't speak on it.
Yeah. Well, that's the irony. We'll spend money on that. We spend money on all different things these days. So it's not as if it's all about the money. As you know, we can't. We'll spend. If we'll choose an office environment, we'll spend we'll use Apple Mac laptops. We'll spend thousands on the hardware, thousands on the software, thousands on what you think are the essential bits of the workstation. But the other bits are like it's the perception of what's important, and then that budget is carved up accordingly. And I'm sure that goes to the greater kind of fit out, whereby the looks, the walls, the finishes, the carpeting, and the last bit of the budget is the furniture. So whether it's the ergonomic high-end stuff or the normal stuff within an office, it's always the last thing to be considered. And yet it's the one thing, as my grandmother used to say, have a good bed and a good pair of shoes. Because if you're not in one, you're in the other. It's the same with your chair. In theory, you've got to have a good pair of shoes and a damn good bed and a damn good chair, because at the moment we're spending arguably 8 hours in each of them.
Yep.
There you go.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I've got on my list that I should ask you about your days in the Lebanon.
Oh, well, obviously being ex-military, that's something I suppose I could divulge, but no.
I was thinking, it must have been very culturally different. But
very.
Was it a bit of a bit of a culture shock, if nothing else?
Well, the irony of it is, a lot of people. It depends what your thoughts or dare I say perceived ideas of Lebanon is. as in I spent the first half of my time there explaining to people that there aren't any camels, there's no sand, there's no deserts. We ski for 6 months of the year. There is alcohol, there's beaches, there's drugs, there's gambling. And it's like, I thought you're going to the Middle East. I am. It's actually, well, they consider themselves a Mediterranean country, as in they are on the Mediterranean, as you may well know. But literally, that's as Middle Eastern as it gets. It's a secular country, so yes, there are people, or not people, women in chadors, but equally on the beach, and equally there'll be a woman in a thong on the beach. It's not because it's secular, it's Christian and Muslim and 16 other factions, hence the civil war, I might add. So it's not what a lot of people thought it was going to be. Sorry, when they heard I was living there, they're like, oh my God, you're going to Saudi Arabia. It's not at all. I mean, traditionally and historically, it was the Paris of the Middle East. And often referred to that, whereby, before unfortunately the civil war there, it was beautiful. Palm trees. It's like the south of France. And with it being under French mandates, there's also reference that because they speak French as well. Unfortunately, I didn't, so I couldn't. That didn't help me at all. But yeah, no, it's an amazing country. It's even better because there is that still element of danger. So it keeps, dare I say, the riffraff out, and it's steeped historically, as you can imagine. It's the birthplace of civilization to an extent, and you can go to archaeological. It's like you can go to archaeological sites there, Sidon, Byblos, Tyre, places like that. Baalbek is the most famous one. It's the largest Roman temple outside of Rome, and there is nobody there. It's like going to the Acropolis and you being the only person walking around. There's no bus tourists of Japanese tourists or Kodak stands selling thing. It's empty because obviously, you have got Hezbollah firing rockets over it at the moment, but that element of danger, which has never left, whichever way you look at it, since the early 80s, since the breakout of the Civil War, has kept it under wraps. And God help us when everything calms down and it gets mobbed, because you won't be able to get to these places. But no, if anyone hasn't been or hasn't tried their food, if nothing else, it's an amazing place. I spent a lot of time there, and I still go there virtually every other year. I've got a lot of family and friends there.
It's talking about travel and different parts of the world, and parts of the world where we may have a different culture and technologically they may be in a different place and everything else. Both of you must watch these shows with a certain Ben Fogle and whatever, where he travels to around the world and whatever. And quite often I think there's tends to be a conversation at some point about technology and so you've got internet here or whatever, and part of me just wants to scream at the TV, like, just don't do it, because as soon as you go down that room, as soon as you go down that route, at the moment you're fit, you're healthy, you're active all day long. Your work involves you're getting good sleep, etc. As soon as you go down that route, you'll sit there, you'll be static for ages. You'll become more and more dependent on tech. You're going to spend more and more time doing that. I mean, it's and then they visit other people that from the UK and whatever that have gone to these places or whatever, and it's like they're trying to get off grid again. They're trying to get away from technology. Oh yeah, we don't have any of that here or whatever. It's almost like we've got a world at the moment where actually, everybody that's had tech and had this way of working is trying to find a balance and trying to get back to less of it, and then you've got another part of the world that look at all this shiny tech. I wonder what would it be like if we had all of this. Just don't do it, folks. It's weird.
Well, again, I think that's why these things go full circle. You've got to cliche it is, you've got to try these things to realize this is very addictive, or this is absolute terrible culturally for our children or for that generation. And we brought up a whole generation. There's a lot of kind of plays on Gen X at the moment of how we didn't have this, and we used to eat this and eat that and never worry about this and never worry about that. And yet we've now got Generation Z where none of that, you couldn't let them cross the road, or you wouldn't trust them with anything, whereby in our day, it was totally different. And I think that's what's happened. We've gone so far down that particular avenue, we've realized actually it's a very sad state of affairs when our children are going to university, you have to kind of take them by the hand and show them how to do this and show them how to do that. And it's like, geez, when I went, you found that out yourself, or you just were left.
That's what I've done with my kids. Is that the wrong thing to have done?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, well, one of them was in here a minute ago, and it literally, I mean, we just dumped him up there with his stuff and said, get on with it.
Yeah.
I think that's the right way. I think it's,
I cried. And that's before I even left. When I got there, it was, and we. It's only apt because, as you said, they're all going back this week or next week, and they're all worried about. Well, if you come with me and see who the other people in the house are going to be, it's like, no. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to do that, and we've lost that toughness or that edginess, whereby we could do it But in my day, your parents either didn't have time or the energy to do it. And it was the last thing. It's like, right, you're done now here. You wanted to go here. Because again, in those days, it was a conscious choice. Yeah. Now it's like, this is not school. This is university. As in, this is meant to be a choice. And don't get me started on this, because I'm totally against it. The whole education system is completely ruined in a way. But anyway. That's for another time.
That's possibly for another show. That's for another show.
Yeah,
yeah. Look at that. We've kind of come full circle. The thing is, I didn't know we were going to get the Dalmatian shirt. That's really added so much value to this already before we even started. So we didn't even get onto flared jeans, which was another one of our topics of subject. We'll have to have you back sometime, Mark, to flare up the jeans topic.
There you go. I can add some flair to this. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us.
They say you should never meet your heroes, but I think you guys have handled that very well.
Yes.
It's been a pleasure. All yours.
Is he saying that we're his heroes, or no?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, absolutely. There we go. Folks, I hope you've enjoyed that. Another week of Wow Ergonomics. So back with real vengeance after the 6.5 weeks or whatever it was of being at home with young people making a noise. So no, if you survived all of that, well done to you. But it's not surviving, is it? It's actually just it's not. It's actually part and parcel of life, and that's a wonderful thing. We will be back with more of the same of this next week. Do come and join us then as well. It might be. We don't know. It's like butter. You don't know until you taste it. Until then, bye for now.
Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.